I'm now getting to the scene that I've been thinking about for a while, how it's quite difficult to get something like this right in a series like this, particularly given that they've only given us 6 episodes, and that's quite a short period of time in which to establish a meaningful relationship between two characters. It was interesting that when Ruby goes rushing out of the lecture hall, I probably should have been rolling my eyes because I think I've lost track of the number of times either James or Ruby has gone running out of a classroom. They just don't seem to be able to make it all the way through either a lecture, a class, or any sort of activity inside a classroom. But anyway, it's very romantic, it's very dramatic, and it's very angsty. Side note, I find it very interesting that the German word Angst means fear, and yet when we have ported it over into English, we have mutated its meaning such that angst, doesn't mean fear anymore, but it's almost like a form of heightened emo, which is interesting. It's exactly the same word, and we did steal it from the Germans, but we've turned it into its own thing, as we often do. Anyway, I digress. So it's very romantic, despite the fact that they've done it a few times, as she goes dashing out. It's also fortunate that he knows exactly where she lives, so he catches up with her pretty quick, and we have that beautiful sequence where they go running up the stairs. Like she runs up the stairs, he chases after her. There is something about staircases and romance movies. In real life, stairs are not really great for anything except cardio. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm usually pretty tired walking up a long flight of stairs. And if I was running up a flight of stairs, I'd be pretty out of puff. Nonetheless, this whole sequence between Ruby and James is just the best in terms of the trope of, the push and pull dynamic of this relationship where they're really attracted to each other. They really want one another, but they keep pushing and pulling at one another, and it's just ripping them both apart. And in a lot of these series, it's really annoying. Like, there have been many of these ones where you just don't care anymore. You get to the point where you're like, okay, you guys, you both need to seek therapy. I don't care about your relationship anymore. I was not invested, or if I was invested, I'm now tired of you. By this point in time, I was thoroughly invested. So even though it is the height of melodrama to have both of them standing on the stairs shouting at one another passionately, I was really engrossed in the moment. I totally bought the whole thing. Every time she tries to walk away, he says something that makes her stop. When he tries to pull back, she pokes at him again as well to make him come back. Neither of them want the conversation or the relationship to end, but neither of them are prepared to take the steps that are required to allow them to progress together as a relationship. So on the one hand, it's really infuriating, but on the other hand, it's really good theatre. And because you're so invested in the characters, you kind of forgive them for being so melodramatic. So the push-pull dynamic continues as she eventually breaks away from the conversation, runs up the stairs, and goes to her room. There's a weird moment where she sort of ducks down, and I'm not sure whether it's because she's dropped her keys or whether or not the creators wanted us to see that James was coming up the stairs after her. But anyway, he doesn't want the conversation to finish. She then comes back to it. They argue some more. She then pulls away from him. He pulls her back. There's a very, very passionate kiss, which is extremely satisfying. And I would argue that this kiss is way better than the one that we saw in episode 4, I think, which was the donor gala one when they're after they've restored the power. Like, that was a nice kiss, but I felt like this one was so much more satisfying and dramatic. It was really the culmination of so much frustration and desire and angst. And so the only questions I had about this particular scene were, where does her shoulder bag go? Because when she goes back towards him, she's got her bag over her shoulder. And then when they start kissing, either the bag falls down or it just miraculously vanishes. And the other thing is, how do they get into the bedroom? Like, do they just pause the passionate kiss while they unlock the door? Or does he somehow kick it down? I don't know. I'm quibbling. Anyway, in terms of the love scene itself, I don't think that I'm going to be able to show very much on YouTube because I really don't want to get the video taken down. And also, I would feel a little bit weird and porny narrating over the top of their sex scene. So I'm just going to give some commentary about some parts of the scene that I really liked. So the main thing that I thought was fantastic was I thought that it was very well shot. A lot of sex scenes are they're very fabricated. They feel extremely orchestrated, choreographed. And I could tell that this was a very choreographed scene. Like, don't get me wrong, this scene was so beautifully shot and put together that, of course, it's been choreographed shot by shot. There would have been, as I think the interviews have pointed out, there's an intimacy coordinator that would have helped with this, but it seemed very natural and it was very romantic. It wasn't just, okay, then now the two of them are getting together and they're just going to have sex. So first of all, I thought what was fantastic was they're clearly into one another, they're grabbing at one another, they fall on the bed together. But then you see Ruby start to have some doubts because she's having some flashbacks to some terrible things that James has said to her. And fair enough, like, he's been treating her really badly the last few weeks, and now all of a sudden they're just to fall into bed together. But what I really liked about this scene is that James is so attuned to Ruby that as soon as she disengages from him, as soon as he realizes that she's not as into this as he is, he stops immediately. And I think that's beautiful because there's a lot of teen shows these days where they try to emphasize the importance of consent by going, are you sure? Are you really sure? Do you really want this? And it's very, very forced. What I liked here is that they used it as part of the character development and the relationship development to show that even though he's carried away by his, sexual feelings about her, he is still as sensitive to what she wants that when she disengages, he stops. Then I really liked the conversation that they had. I liked that he was finally open with her and told her about how he felt and what had happened and why he had been treating her that way. And it didn't get him out of jail. Like, it doesn't mean that what he did was right, but at least she could understand the context for what he had done. What I then loved is, I mean, it's so tropey, but the way he kisses his way up her arm, it is so tender and intimate that I loved it. And the little nibble at the end is just gorgeous. And then the agency that she demonstrates in this particular scene is fantastic because when they do have sex, it is Ruby that initiates it. It is she who makes the decision to climb into his lap and then they go for it. So again, it's all about reinforcing that it's not just a one-sided thing. They're not just carried away in the moment. She's the one that decides once she's comfortable that they're going to have sex. And then they have some really cute banter about him being a boy toy or her boyfriend and all that kind of stuff. It's just a really well done sex scene. Like, if you watch a lot of romance, you see a lot of these scenes done. You see them done really poorly. You see them made raunchy for the sake of it. I mean, this scene was not graphic. It was not graphic in any way, but the suggestion in it, you could see that there were implications of oral sex. You could see that there were, you know, the bit where he's kind of nibbling his way down her body, and I think he even grabs her zipper with his teeth at one point. You can see the bit where he's ripping the condom package, so there's safe sex in there as well. So there's a lot of subtle messaging. There's a lot of eroticism in there without it being graphic. And I'm really comfortable with a sex scene like this. I think it's great that they had sex. I think it's great that they both clearly enjoyed it. And I'm really happy that it was filmed so well. And I'm really glad that the messaging was quite positive. So there you go.